My husband earns $120,000 a year, gives all his money to his family, and leaves exactly $8 in our joint account. When I accepted an 8-month overseas assignment, he slapped me and demanded, "Why didn't you ask for my permission? If you leave, who is going to serve me and my parents?" Asterisk asterisk. I don't remember how long I stood frozen in the kitchen. I only remember the sharp, crisp sound of the slap ringing out like a whip cracking across my face. My ears were ringing, my left cheek burned with a stinging heat, and my head was knocked entirely to one side. In that split second, I saw my husband's hand still hovering in the air, as if even he couldn't quite believe he had just struck me. But his eyes held no hesitation. They glared at me, hard and furious, as if I were a criminal. His name is Liam. My name is Hannah. Since the day we got married, outsiders just referred to me as Liam's wife, and I was so used to calling him honey in every situation, even when he no longer deserved it. "You're going on a business trip for 8 months, and you didn't run it by me first?" Liam gritted out, word by word. "If you leave, who is going to wait on me and my parents? Who's going to cook? Who's going to do the laundry? Who is going to drive my mom to her doctor's appointments and pick up her prescriptions?" I ran the tip of my tongue along the inside of my cheek. I tasted something salty, the metallic tang of blood. Oddly, that sensation made me incredibly lucid. This wasn't the first time Liam had put his hands on me, but it was the loudest slap, so loud that I could clearly hear my own self-respect shattering against the tile floor. I looked straight at him, trying to keep my voice normal. So normal that even I was surprised. "I'm going on a corporate assignment, Liam. I'm not going on vacation." "I forbid it," Liam shouted, spit flying from his mouth. "If you leave, you're betraying me. You think the few bucks you make a month makes you someone important? You think this house would starve to death without your pathetic paycheck?" I wanted to laugh, but my throat choked up. My pathetic paycheck was the only thing keeping this house from collapsing into foreclosure for years. But Liam never looked at that. He only looked at what he called my duty as a daughter-in-law. I turned my face away and walked toward the master bedroom. I didn't want to be in this kitchen anymore. Standing here, in front of the refrigerator where I meticulously meal prepped for his parents, in front of the sink where I stood until my back ached every single day, I felt like a ghost. But Liam stepped quickly, blocking the bedroom door. "Let me tell you something, Hannah." He lowered his voice, but that tone was even more terrifying than his shouting. "If you get on that plane, we are getting a divorce." Asterisk. Divorce. Asterisk. He had threatened me with that word several times whenever I didn't obey him. The previous times, I had cried, I had begged, I had admitted fault when I had done nothing wrong. I had pleaded like a child, terrified of losing a piece of candy. But tonight, strangely, my heart was as flat as dead water. The slap had awakened something dormant inside me. I looked at Liam and said softly, "When you find a woman willing to live with exactly $8 in her bank account, and willing to act as a maid for you and your parents, then we will get a divorce." Liam froze. He probably didn't expect that response. He blinked, then scowled as if I had just uttered absolute nonsense. But absurd or not, the truth was right there. I had seen the numbers. I pushed past him gently and walked into the room. I opened my suitcase. The sound of its wheels rolling across the hardwood floor felt cold and final. An 8-month corporate assignment in London was the biggest opportunity of my career. My company assigned me to an international project, and my boss made it clear that upon my return, I would be in line for a senior management position. I had worked for years, stayed up countless nights, and swallowed endless belittling remarks just to wait for a door like this to open. Liam stood at the doorway, his voice suddenly softening as if slipping on a new mask. "Hannah, I just lost my temper. I'm just worried. My mom's arthritis has been acting up, and her blood pressure is all over the place. With you so far away, how am I supposed to manage?" I zipped my suitcase shut with a sharp zip times, and looked up. "You can hire a caregiver. Hire a nurse," Liam frowned. "That costs money. Plus, you can't trust strangers the way you trust family." I let out a laugh, though no sound came out. "Then why don't you take a leave of absence to care for her?" Liam immediately bristled, his ego bruised. How can I take a leave? My job is important. Don't you get that? Looking at him, I saw it all too clearly. His job was important, while my career was just a cute hobby. His income was for supporting the family, while my income was just an obligation. He had the right to dictate my life, but I didn't even have the right to dictate my own. I pulled my suitcase out of the room, walking right past him. I didn't cry. I was afraid that if I cried, I would soften like I always did. My flight leaves at 8 a.m. tomorrow, I said, reciting it like a schedule. There are pre-packaged meals in the fridge, enough to last your parents a few days. I've rescheduled your mother's doctor's appointment for 2 weeks from now. For those 2 weeks, you'll have to figure it out yourself. Liam grabbed my arm. If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. I looked at his hand, the hand that had just struck me, the hand holding me like a piece of property. I pried his fingers off, one by one, as slowly as unlocking a rusted padlock. You can say that when our joint account has more than $8 in it. That night, I slept on the living room sofa. I refused to lie next to a man who would slap me 1 minute and use a loving tone the next. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a direct deposit notification for my paycheck. My salary wasn't massive, but it was enough for me to live a very comfortable, decent life if I didn't have to carry this entire household on my back. I opened my banking app and looked at the joint checking account. Just as I knew, it sat there barren. $8. $8. Not even enough for a decent breakfast at a diner. I switched over to view Liam's personal account. He had accidentally saved his password on my iPad once. In the transaction history, just yesterday, a massive sum of money had been transferred out. The recipient was his mother. I stared at that number, my hands turning ice cold. Liam, who made $120,000 a year, could comfortably transfer thousands of dollars to his parents, but let his marital joint account drain down to $8. And he still had the audacity to tell me, asterisk, you think this house would starve to death without your pathetic paycheck? Asterisk, I lay completely still, my eyes wide open in the dark. I remembered every single time I had tried to talk to him about finances, about savings, about our future. Liam always shut it down with the same sentence. Asterisk, my parents raised me. I owe them everything. You're the daughter-in-law. You need to understand your place. Asterisk, asterisk. You need to understand your place. Asterisk. Those words had been the rope tying me down for 8 years. I understood my place so well that I forgot I was also my mother's daughter. I forgot I was the little girl my father used to carry on his shoulders through the Sunday farmers market. I understood my place so well that I viewed my own basic needs as selfish. I understood my place so well that I accepted being slapped. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. I quietly rolled my suitcase to the front door. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Liam was sleeping soundly, snoring evenly. He probably thought I would change my mind again. He was used to me turning back. He was used to my endurance. He was used to me always being there, a silent shadow in his kitchen. I gently pulled the front door shut and took the elevator down. In the elevator mirror, my cheek was still slightly red. I reached up, adjusted my collar, and applied a thin layer of lipstick. I wasn't doing it to prove anything to anyone. I did it to remind myself, I am still me. I am not the Smith family's indentured servant. The Uber drove toward O'Hare Airport as dawn broke. The city of Chicago was waking up, and I felt like I was waking up from a long, suffocating nightmare. I texted my boss that I was on my way. I texted my best friend that I had left. I did not text Liam. I was afraid that if I did, I would just receive another fake plea to stay or a familiar threat. On the plane, as the turbulence during takeoff pushed my stomach into my chest, I suddenly thought of that $8. It was so small it was laughable, but that tiny number was my absolute rock bottom. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, as if speaking to the woman sitting next to me. Asterisk. 8 months is long enough. Enough to change everything. Asterisk. I knew that when the plane landed, my phone would blow up with texts, accusations, and demands to come home. But for the first time, I wanted to live for my own calling. The moment the plane's wheels touched the tarmac at Heathrow, my heart skipped a beat. Not out of a fear of flying, but because I knew that the second I took my phone off airplane mode, a hurricane would flood in. I sat still for a few minutes, watching the passengers stand up to grab their luggage, everyone rushing as if terrified of missing out on something. For the first time in 8 years, I wasn't afraid of being slow. I was only afraid of going soft. When the cellular signal returned, the screen immediately lit up with notifications. Dozens of missed calls and a barrage of texts, all from Liam. They ranged from vicious curses to familiar threats, then shifted to an exhausted tone, and finally ended with, "Asterisk, come home. We need to talk. Asterisk." I didn't open all of them. I just skimmed enough to realize one thing. He didn't ask if my face still hurt. He didn't ask if London was cold. He didn't ask if I had eaten. He only asked one thing. Asterisk. Who is going to serve us? Asterisk. I pulled my suitcase out of the arrivals gate. The sky was overcast, a light drizzle falling, and a chill wind slipped down my collar. The company car was waiting. The driver was an older, silver-haired gentleman who spoke with a slight accent, likely an expat who had lived here for decades. He politely asked if it was my first time in the UK. I politely said yes, and then we rode in silence. On the way to the corporate apartment, the wet streets and yellow streetlights reflected long streaks on the wet pavement. Looking out the window, I felt like an escapee fleeing a familiar prison to enter a strange city. But the strangeness allowed me to breathe. The apartment the company provided wasn't massive, but it was neat, modern, and filled with natural light. I left my suitcase in the middle of the living room and stood still, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. If I were back in Chicago right now, I'd be clattering around the kitchen, cooking dinner for my in-laws. Then I'd do the laundry, mop the floors, and listen to Liam complain that the soup was too salty, the shirts weren't dry, or that his mother's legs ached and needed a massage. But here, I only heard the rain. The rain was cold, but there was no one here demanding I bend over backward to please them. I had barely hung up my coat when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Liam. It was my mother-in-law, Martha. I knew she would call. I took a deep breath and answered. Her voice came through the speaker, sharp as a knife. "Hannah, you think you're so incredible now, don't you? Abandoning your husband, abandoning your home to run off overseas. Who do you think you are?" I let her finish her tirade. She cursed me for being ungrateful. She said I was a wretched daughter-in-law. She said I was making Liam lose face in front of the entire extended family, and that my business trip was just an excuse to run wild. I listened, my throat bone dry, but I managed to keep my voice quiet and steady. "Mom, I went on a corporate assignment mandated by my company. I didn't abandon my home. I went to work." "Work? How much money do you even make?" she scoffed. "Liam makes 6 figures a year. You think going away for a few months makes you some big-shot executive?" I looked out the window. The rain was still falling. In my mind, the number $8 flashed clearly. I spoke slowly, placing every word deliberately. "Mom, you say Liam makes 6 figures. So, could you transfer me a little money so I can pay the mortgage next month? The joint account only has $8 left." The other end of the line went dead silent for exactly 1 beat. Then, her tone shifted, biting off every syllable. "My son's money is for me to hold on to. You are the daughter-in-law. You need to know your place. You marry into a family. You provide for that family. Why are you asking for money? Are you calculating pennies with your own in-laws?" I closed my eyes. Asterisk, know your place. Asterisk, I had heard that phrase until my ears bled over the past 8 years. It was the muzzle they strapped over my mouth every time I tried to speak. But this time, I refused to wear it. I spoke softly, but I did not back down. "Mom, I'm not calculating pennies. I'm stating a fact. If I don't go to work, how are we going to pay the mortgage next month? How do we pay the property taxes? How do we afford your medications? I cannot be a daughter-in-law, an ATM machine, and a live-in maid all at the same time." She shrieked, her voice cracking as if I had just committed high treason. "How dare you speak to me like that? Hannah, don't you get insolent with me. You get back here right now, or I will show you what happens when you cross me." I heard the phrase times, "show you what happens times," and my heart turned to ice. Not because I was afraid, but because I suddenly realized how casually she tossed out threats, as if they were completely accustomed to using violence and intimidation to keep me obedient. I bit my lip, my voice maintaining its even cadence. "Mom, I am working right now. I'm hanging up." I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but they weren't shaking out of defeat. They were shaking because I had just done something I had never dared to do before. I hung up on my mother-in-law. I put the phone on the table and sank into a chair. In the quiet apartment, I could clearly hear my own breathing. I remembered the slap. I remembered Liam's eyes. I remembered the question, asterisk, who is going to serve us? Asterisk. Those memories twisted together, forming a knot of suffocating resentment stuck in my throat. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, staring at my hands. The hands that had packed endless Tupperwares of food, washed mountains of dishes, scrubbed out stains, massaged my mother-in-law's feet, and dialed the phone to schedule their doctor's appointments. These hands had done so much labor that no one ever acknowledged as work. They just saw it as my duty. My phone buzzed again. Liam. I didn't want to answer, but I knew if I kept dodging him, the storm would only grow. I pressed accept. Hello? Liam's voice on the other end was hoarse. You made it? I stayed silent. He exhaled loudly, then shifted his tone, trying to sound soft. Hannah, I just ran hot yesterday. Slapping you was wrong, but you were wrong too. You left without asking me. You left, and now who's going to take care of my parents? Who's going to take care of me? I let out a laugh. This time it was audible, but it sounded shattered. You called me just to ask who is going to take care of you and your parents. You didn't even ask if my face still hurts? Liam was quiet for a few seconds before his voice hardened. You're dragging that out again? I apologized, didn't I? You're blowing this out of proportion. You know my mom is sick. Leaving like this is completely ungrateful. I heard the word times ungrateful, times, and my chest stung. In that house, they weaponized filial piety to chain me down. Meanwhile, my duties to my own parents were always treated as an afterthought. I spoke slowly, not raising my voice. Because I knew if I raised my voice, I would just be branded a hysterical bitch in his narrative. Liam, let me ask you one question. The joint account has $8 in it. Do you think that's normal? Liam answered immediately, as if rehearsed. The money I give my parents to hold on to is my duty as a son. Don't micromanage my money. Then the mortgage, the groceries, your parents' medical bills. Who has been paying for those these past few years? I asked. He went silent. I knew the answer. I had been paying for it. I paid for it with my salary. I paid for it by secretly borrowing a few $100 from my own mother here and there, hiding it from Liam because I was terrified he'd yell at me. I paid for it by skipping buying myself a new winter coat so I could buy expensive supplements for his mother. I paid for it by gritting my teeth and enduring it all so his family could live in peace. I continued, my voice quieter but deeper. You slapped me. Then you asked me where I went? I went to work. I went to earn money, to advance my career, to survive, so I never have to look at a bank balance of $8 ever again. You said you wanted a divorce? Fine. But don't you dare say I abandoned our home. That house was never my home. It was a place where I worked for free. The line started heating up. Hannah, what the hell are you saying? You want to blow this up? If you leave, don't you dare blame me for what happens next. I don't blame you, I said. I'm just done. The word times done times slipped out, and even I was startled by it. I used to love Liam. I used to believe that if I tried a little harder, if I endured a little more, we could have a peaceful family. But the more I endured, the more they treated it as their absolute right. The harder I tried, the smaller I shrank. And then, the day I looked at a joint account with only $8 left, I understood. They didn't just take my money, they took my spine. I hung up, not waiting for his reaction. I stood up, unzipped my suitcase, and pulled out a thin envelope my mother had secretly slipped in before I left. Inside was a little cash and a handwritten note. Asterisk, don't let them mistreat you. Mom's still here to take care of you. Asterisk. Reading it, My eyes burned. I had hidden the truth from my mom for so long. I tried to act like everything was fine so she wouldn't worry, but she always knew. She always loved me. I called her. She answered quickly, her voice full of anxiety. Did you land okay? Is it cold over there? Have you eaten? Hearing those simple questions, the tears I had been holding back flooded out. I turned my face away, terrified she would hear me choke on my sobs. I'm fine, Mom. I made it. My mom went quiet for a moment, her voice softening. Are you crying, Hannah? Tell me what happened. Don't hide it anymore. I inhaled, exhaled, and told the truth for the very first time. Mom, I'm so tired. He hit me. I've endured it for so long. I want to live a different life. My mom didn't interrogate me. She just spoke, every word wrapping around me like a warm blanket. You are my daughter. You live with dignity. You work with dignity. No one has the right to humiliate you. You do what you think is right. Your dad and I are right here. I hung up and slid down to the floor, leaning against a chair. Inside me, there was a feeling that was simultaneously agonizing and incredibly warm. Agonizing, because I had allowed myself to suffer for far too long. Warm, because I knew that somewhere out there were people who saw me as a daughter, not as a daughter-in-law with duties. That night, I opened my laptop to review the project files. I forced myself to focus because work was my life raft right now. But every time my eyes stopped on a line of text, I thought about tomorrow, next week, the next 8 months. I thought about the day I would return, or perhaps never return in the way they expected. I no longer wanted to return to be a servant. I wanted to return as a woman who had the power to decide her own life. I glanced at my phone again. Liam's messages were still popping up. I didn't reply. I just silently said to myself, asterisk, if you still saw me as a human being, you would learn to ask if I was okay. But since you only ask who is going to serve you, these 8 months will teach me how to walk away. Asterisk. For the first 3 days in London, I practically lived by the grueling schedule my company had set. Morning meetings, afternoon site visits, evening documentation reviews. I threw myself into that grinding routine as a way to escape. Running away from the unread texts, the missed calls, running away from the guilt that had been brainwashed into my head over the last 8 years. The idea that I was selfish for prioritizing myself over my husband's family. On the 4th night, just as I shut my laptop, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Liam, it was my dad. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. Hi, Dad. Hey, kiddo. His voice was deep and gravelly. Are you settled in over there? I swallowed hard. Yes, Dad. It's busy, but I'm managing. My dad was silent for a moment. Then he spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. Your mom told me. You two had a fight. Did he put his hands on you? I closed my eyes. I didn't expect my mom to tell him, but I couldn't blame her. I couldn't hide it forever. Yes, a heavy, agonizing sigh came through the receiver. Hannah, why did you let him hit you? I gave a sad smile. I thought if I just endured it, the house would stay peaceful. Enduring like that is just destroying yourself, my dad said, his voice dropping an octave. You are my daughter. No one has the right to hit you. No one. Hearing that made my throat tighten. For years, I had slapped the label of dutiful daughter-in-law on myself. I had forgotten that I was still my parents' daughter. What are you going to do? He asked. I was quiet for a few seconds. I don't have it all figured out yet. But I don't want to live the old way anymore. Just focus on doing a good job at work, my dad said. We can figure the house stuff out later. Your mom and I won't force you to go back to him. Just remember, you did nothing wrong. I hung up, standing with my back against the wall for a long time. My dad didn't yell at me for leaving my husband. He didn't scold me for bringing shame to the family. He just said one thing, asterisk, you did nothing wrong. Asterisk, that sentence was light as a breeze, but it caught me before I could fall. The next day, I received an email confirming a meeting with our UK partners. This project was a rare opportunity. My boss had put me in charge of the data integration phase between the two firms. I knew that if I nailed this, these 8 months wouldn't just be an escape, they would be a massive turning point in my life. During the video conference, my personal phone vibrated constantly. I muted it. When the meeting finished, I checked my screen and saw over a dozen missed calls from an unknown number. I guessed who it was. I didn't call back. A few minutes later, a text came through. Asterisk Hannah, it's Mom. Why aren't you answering your phone? Are you hiding from us? Asterisk, I stared at the screen, my heart heavy. I had no desire to converse with my mother-in-law right now, but I also didn't want to give them ammunition to call me disrespectful. I texted back, Asterisk, I was in a meeting. I'll call you tonight. Asterisk. That evening, I called. She picked up immediately, her voice abrasive. Are you so busy you can't even pick up the phone for your mother-in-law? What do you take this family for? I sat on my bed, gripping the phone tightly. Mom, I was working. I told you that. Work, work, work. You go off to work and abandon your husband, abandon your in-laws. You think going away for a few months makes you an outsider who doesn't have to answer to us. I took a deep breath. Mom, I didn't abandon anyone. I went on a corporate assignment. I'm still sending money back home. She scoffed maliciously. How much are you sending? Liam makes over $100,000 a year. You think your little paycheck is enough to support a household? I bit my lip. Mom, the joint account has $8 in it. You're holding on to Liam's money. I'm not questioning it, I'm just stating the facts. That is my son's money. She shrieked. It's entirely right that I hold it. You are the daughter-in-law. Don't you dare try to touch it. I closed my eyes. Mom, that is marital money. I have been working for 8 years. I contributed to that too. You dare argue with me, she screamed. You get back here right now. If you don't, then don't ever call yourself a daughter of this house again. That one sentence sliced through everything like a guillotine. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just spoke very quietly, but very clearly. Mom, I'm not coming back, and I am no longer asking to be your daughter-in-law. She went dead silent for a few seconds before screaming. You wouldn't dare! After 8 years of acting so obedient, I'm tired, I said. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but inside my chest, there was a strange, hollow space, as if a heavy shackle had just been unlocked. That night, Liam texted, Asterisk, so you're disrespecting my mother now? Do you even consider me your husband anymore? Asterisk. I read it and didn't reply. I was exhausted from explaining myself to someone who invariably sided with his parents. I was exhausted from constantly apologizing for things that weren't my fault. The next morning, I got a text from my older sister. Maya, Asterisk Hannah. How are you? Mom called me crying, saying you got beat by your husband. Asterisk, I texted back. Asterisk, I'm okay. I'm overseas for work. I'm not dead yet. Asterisk, Maya called me immediately. Hannah, are you crazy? You get beat up and you just say, I'm not dead yet? How long were you planning to endure this? I laughed, though tears sprang to my eyes. I endured it for 8 years. Come back here. I'll pick you up from the airport, divorce him. I'll take care of you. I shook my head, even though I knew she couldn't see me. I don't want to come back like someone running away in defeat. I want to stand on my own 2 feet first. Maya was quiet for a moment. Fine, I'll wait. But remember, do not ever go back to that house. I hung up and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The sky was gray, but there was a thin streak of sunlight breaking through in the distance. I thought about the next 8 months. I thought about returning as someone entirely different, or perhaps not returning to the life they expected at all. That afternoon, while I was editing a report, my boss messaged me privately. Asterisk Hannah, I have a dinner with our local partners tonight. I'd like you to join me. Asterisk, I agreed. I changed my clothes and put on some light makeup. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who was noticeably thinner, but whose eyes were no longer clouded and dull like they were back in Chicago. The dinner went smoothly. The partners praised my meticulous work. My boss looked at me and gave a small, approving nod. I knew that right now, I was being seen and valued as a capable professional, not as an indentured daughter-in-law. When I returned to my apartment, I checked my phone and saw a text from Liam. Asterisk. Come home. I promise from now on I'll let you manage the finances. I promise I won't hit you anymore. Asterisk. I stared at those words for a long time. If this were a week ago, maybe I would have softened. I might have thought, asterisk, well, he promised, let's just go back to keep the peace. Asterisk. But now, I only felt entirely empty. I texted back, asterisk, you've promised too many times. I don't believe you anymore. Asterisk, he replied almost instantly. Asterisk, what else do you want from me? Are you trying to destroy this family? Asterisk, I typed out every word deliberately. Asterisk, that house was never mine. I was just an unpaid tenant. Asterisk, he didn't reply again. I put the phone down and sprawled out on the bed. I didn't feel strong. I just felt tired. But this tiredness was different from the exhaustion of living with my in-laws. This was the tiredness of someone walking on their own 2 feet, not the exhaustion of someone being dragged across the floor. Before falling asleep, I texted my mom. Asterisk, Mom, I'm okay. I won't be coming back right away. I want to live a different life. Asterisk, my mom replied. Asterisk, I will wait for you. Don't be afraid. Asterisk, I turned off the lamp. In the dark, I thought about his question. Asterisk, who is going to serve us? Asterisk, I thought that perhaps, for my entire life, I had served enough people. It was finally time to serve myself. A week passed since that phone call with my mother-in-law, and I had almost entirely cut off contact with Liam. Not because I was so angry I couldn't bear to hear his voice, but because every time his name flashed on my screen, my heart physically clenched in a panic response. I was afraid I would soften again. I was afraid I would remember the early days when we were broke but loved each other, and use those memories to justify everything he had done to me since. Work swept me away. The project entered a critical, high-stress phase. I stayed at the London office until late into the evening, coming back to my apartment just in time to scarf down a sandwich and open my laptop to review the datasets. Sometimes, when I was dead tired, my mind would drift back to that kitchen in Chicago, to the fact that right now, his parents were probably sitting at the table waiting for dinner, and Liam was probably scrolling on his phone, waiting for me to come home and cook it. Whenever my thoughts went there, I firmly reminded myself, asterisk, I am not there anymore. Asterisk. On Friday night, I had just finished taking a shower when my phone buzzed. It was Maya. I picked up. Hannah, how are you holding up? She asked, her voice lowered as if afraid of startling me. I'm fine, I said. Lots of work, but I'm used to it. She sighed. Liam called me. He said you're being brainwashed by people over there. He said you were incredibly disrespectful to his mother, and that your corporate assignment is just a cover to run away. I gave a dry laugh. What else did he say? He said he messed up, but you're in the wrong too. He begged me to convince you to come home. I stayed silent for a few seconds. What do you think? She didn't answer immediately. I could hear her breathing softly over the line. I think if this were the Maya from 10 years ago, I'd tell you to suck it up and endure it. But now? I think leaving was the best thing you could have done. The fact that he put his hands on you is the absolute line. I closed my eyes. Maya, I'm scared. I'm terrified that if I go back, it will just revert to exactly how it was. Then don't come back to him, she said decisively. If you go back to that house, I will literally never speak to you again. I laughed, but tears spilled over my cheeks. You're always so aggressive. I'm aggressive so you don't have to suffer, she retorted. Mom and Dad aren't going to force you to go back either. Mom cried, but she's not angry with you. She just said, when we gave her away at the wedding, I thought she had someone to protect her. Who would have known? My throat clamped shut. I couldn't bear to picture my mother crying. I couldn't bear the thought of how hard I had tried to act like everything was fine just to give my parents peace of mind, while they somehow inherently sensed I wasn't okay at all. After hanging up, I sat on my bed for a long time. I scrolled through old text messages from Liam, back from when we first started dating. He had once texted, asterisk, I will never let you suffer any hardship, asterisk. Looking at that sentence, I found it almost comical. Maybe back then, he truly meant it. He just somehow forgot it over the years. That night, I had a nightmare. I dreamt I was standing in my in-laws' kitchen, holding a ladle, surrounded by disembodied voices, yelling, "Asterisk Hannah. Hurry up and cook, Hannah. Did you do the laundry? Hannah. Mom's legs hurt, come out here and rub them." Asterisk, I turned my head, but couldn't see anyone's face, just gaping mouths talking endlessly, endlessly. I jolted awake, my back drenched in cold sweat. Outside the window, it was still pitch black, a pale yellow streetlight casting a sickly glow into the room. I sat up, clutching my chest, asking myself, asterisk, am I really this traumatized? Asterisk. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. Asterisk Hannah, it's Mom. You aren't answering your phone, so I had to borrow the neighbor's cell to text you. Asterisk, I bit my lip. I knew she wouldn't just give up. I debated for a moment, then texted back, asterisk, I am working right now. I will call you tonight. Asterisk. I couldn't focus all day. My mind kept flashing images of my mother-in-law crying to the neighbors, gathering a crowd of gossiping onlookers. Liam standing next to her, looking like a tragic victim. I knew she was undoubtedly spinning a tale that I had abandoned my husband and run off to be a high-class escort overseas, or some similar nonsense. I hated the feeling of being smeared, but I was also exhausted by the thought of having to defend myself. That evening, I called the number back. She picked up immediately. Her tone was completely different from last time. It was noticeably softer. Hannah, are you still mad at me? I took a deep breath. I'm not mad, I'm just tired. I know I have a hot temper, she said, sniffing dramatically. I said some harsh things the other day. Please don't take it to heart. Come home. Without you, the house is a complete disaster. I offered a sad smile. The house is a disaster because I'm not there to act as the maid, right, Mom? She went quiet, then said, Hannah, Liam is eating terribly. My arthritis is acting up, and his dad is getting old. We need you. But I am not the only person on earth with hands and feet, I said. Liam can do chores. You can hire a caregiver. I cannot just abandon my career. Is your career more important than family? She snapped, her old, demanding tone bleeding back through. Family is important, I said. But I am important too. For 8 years, I put this family above everything else. I'm exhausted. Hannah, what do you mean by that? Are you planning to never come back? Her voice started to tremble. I didn't dodge the question. I don't know everything yet, but right now, I am not coming back. She started crying real, hysterical, sobbing. I could hear her sniffing wetly into the receiver. Are you really this evil? I am an old woman, and you're abandoning me. I closed my eyes. Asterisk, I am an old woman. Asterisk, I had heard that guilt trip phrase countless times over the last 8 years. Every time I heard it, I felt incredibly guilty. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I just felt sad. Mom, I'm not abandoning you. I went to work. I still send money. I still call. What good is money? She wailed. I need a person. I was silent. After a long moment, I said very softly, You need a live-in maid, Mom. You don't need me. She choked on a sob, then hung up. I set the phone down. My hands were freezing. I wasn't happy saying that to her. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt utterly drained. I was tired of the fact that for 8 entire years, they never once asked what times I times needed. They only ever asked if I had done enough for times them asterisk. A few days later, Liam called again. I didn't want to answer, but my boss had just told me to head home early to rest, and my mind felt so blank that I impulsively hit accept. Hannah. His voice was exhausted. Are you really trying to push things to this absolute limit? What limit? I asked. To the point where my entire extended family is cursing your name. They are saying you're an uneducated brat who abandoned her husband and her home. I laughed. Your extended family doesn't pay my bills. Let them curse. I'm not going to die from it. How can you say something like that? Liam flared up. Are you not even thinking about me? I am losing face in front of the entire neighborhood. When you slapped me, were you thinking about me? I asked. He went quiet. After a moment, his voice softened. I was wrong. I admitted it. But you have to think about my parents, too. My mom cries every single day. I sighed. Liam, have you ever once thought about my parents? My parents cry too, but do you even care? He was silent. I knew he hadn't even considered it. In his mind, only his parents were times parents asterisk. My parents were just outsiders. What do you want? He asked, sounding defeated. I told him the truth. I want to be respected. I want total financial transparency. I want you to treat me like a wife, not a servant. I want you to never lay a hand on me again. He let out a cynical scoff. Your dream. What woman doesn't have to take care of her husband's family? That sentence chilled my blood. I realized then that he didn't actually believe he was fundamentally wrong. He only believed he was wrong because it made me mad. I spoke slowly. Liam, if that is truly what you believe, then I am not coming back after these 8 months. Are you threatening me? No, I said. I'm stating a fact. He cursed me out aggressively and hung up. I sat still, not crying. I just felt something deep inside me snap completely. It broke very cleanly, like a dry twig falling to the ground. That weekend, I received a thick envelope mailed from the US. Inside was a photocopy of my Social Security card, a photocopy of my marriage certificate, and a handwritten letter from my mother. Her handwriting was shaky. Asterisk, my daughter, if you want to start your life over, your father and I will not stand in your way. You are not at fault. Asterisk, I clutched the letter to my chest and cried louder than I had in years. I cried for the 8 years that had passed. I cried for the slap, for the $8, 0 balance, for all the times I told myself to asterisk, just let it go asterisk, to keep the peace. After that breakdown, I felt incredibly light. I opened my laptop and searched for divorce attorneys based in Chicago. I typed in the keywords, asterisk divorce consultation, domestic violence, asterisk. My hands shook, but I didn't stop. I knew this path wouldn't be easy. Liam wouldn't let go easily. His mother would refuse to lose. His family would smear my name. But for the very first time, I saw clearly that if I turned back now, I would slowly die in that kitchen. I shut my laptop, stood up, and brewed myself a hot cup of tea. Outside the window, the sun was breaking through the London clouds, casting a warm beam of light into the room, brighter than it had been for days. I stood there for a long time, telling myself, asterisk Hannah, this time, you have to see this through to the very end. It took me almost a full week to truly believe that I was seriously pursuing a divorce and not just throwing the word around in a moment of anger. Every night after work, I sat on the edge of my bed, opened my laptop, and read articles about women surviving domestic abuse and marriages collapsing under the weight of financial control and toxic in-laws. Some of the stories were terrifyingly identical to mine. There were women who endured it for 10, 20 years, waiting until their hair turned gray and their kids went to college before they finally dared to leave. Reading them, I felt profound empathy, but also stark terror. A terror that if I turned back now, I would become one of them. One afternoon, while sitting in my London office, I received an email from a law firm in Chicago. They requested a virtual consultation. I stared at the subject line for a long time, my hand hovering over the mouse, terrified to click open. It felt like clicking. That email was officially declaring to the world that my marriage was dead. Eventually, I clicked it. The consultation took place that evening. The lawyer, Mr. Davis, was a middle-aged man with a deep, steady voice. I gave him the short version, Liam transferring his entire $120K salary to his mother, leaving exactly $8 in the joint account. The slap. My mother-in-law demanding I quit my job to come home and serve them. By the time I finished speaking, my throat felt like I had swallowed sand. Mr. Davis listened in silence, then said, legally speaking, you have solid grounds to file for a contested divorce. Domestic violence is a major factor. Additionally, a spouse transferring all marital income to a third party, severely jeopardizing the marital standard of living, is financial abuse and heavily impacts the division of assets. I asked, my voice trembling. Will I be penalized? If I file, he answered bluntly. It will be exhausting. His family will undoubtedly weaponize pressure and harassment against you. But you are not in the wrong here. Asterisk, you are not in the wrong. Asterisk. Those 6 words made me want to break down. For 8 years, I always thought I was the one in the wrong. Wrong for not being patient enough. Wrong for not being tactful enough. Wrong for not knowing my place. This was the first time a complete stranger, someone with zero connection to me, told me I wasn't wrong. After logging off the call, I sat in silence. I didn't feel relief. I felt immense fear. But this fear was different from before. Before, I was afraid of Liam's rage, afraid of my mother-in-law's tears, afraid of the neighborhood gossip. Now, I was terrified of something else. I was terrified of going back and betraying myself. 2 days later, my mom called again. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice was gentle but audibly exhausted. "I've been thinking for days," she said slowly. "Tell me the absolute truth. Do you still want to be married to him?" I bit my lip. "I don't want to anymore, Mom." She was quiet. I heard her let out a long, heavy sigh. "Then don't go back. I don't need you to cling to the title of wife just for appearances. I just need you to live with basic human dignity." Tears fell before I even realized it. "Mom, I'm so scared. I'm scared people will say I abandoned my husband. Those people aren't paying your bills," my mom said firmly. "Those people aren't taking the physical beatings for you. Why are you living your life for them?" I laughed through my tears. "You're starting to sound a lot like Maya." My mom chuckled softly. "I might be old, but I'm not stupid." After hanging up, my heart felt a bit more grounded, but life didn't let me rest for long. 3 days later, Maya called me in the middle of the night London time. "Hannah, stay calm and listen to me," she said, her voice panicked. "Your mother-in-law is in the hospital." I shot up in bed. "What happened to her?" "She claimed she had a massive drop in blood pressure and passed out in the house. Liam called an ambulance. She's awake now, but she keeps crying to everyone that you abandoning the family caused this." My heart hammered against my ribs. The familiar tidal wave of guilt rushed up my throat. "Is it serious, Maya?" "Not life-threatening," Maya lowered her voice. "The doctors said it's just stress and not eating properly. But they are telling everyone in the neighborhood that you abandoning the house gave her a heart condition." I gripped my phone tightly. I saw the old, familiar trap opening right in front of me. If I flew back to Chicago, I would instantly be crowned the dutiful, forgiving daughter-in-law. If I didn't go back, I would forever be the evil, heartless bitch. I took a deep breath. "Maya, I am not flying back." She was silent for a moment. "I knew you were going to say that, but I have to be honest with you, Hannah. The pressure they're going to put on you is going to be astronomical." "I know," I said. "But if I go back this time, I will never have the strength to leave again for the rest of my life." That night, Liam called. His voice was hoarse, sounding like he had just been crying. "Hannah," he said, "my mom is hospitalized." "What the hell are you still doing over there? Do you not realize how completely out of line you are?" I closed my eyes. "How is your mom?" "How do you think?" he snapped. "She collapsed from stress. Because you left. You get on a plane right now." I could hear faint crying in the background on his end. It was either his mother, or he had put me on speakerphone to make sure I heard her. My chest tightened painfully, but I didn't say times I'll come back. Asterisk, I just asked, "What did the doctors say?" "They said she'll be okay," he admitted, before aggressively pivoting back. "But she is incredibly weak. Come home. Are you going to wait until she drops dead to be satisfied?" That sentence was like a sledgehammer to my skull. I started shaking. "Don't say things like that." "Then come home," he growled. I was silent for a very long time. I pictured his mother lying in a hospital bed. I pictured the judgmental stares of their neighbors. I pictured the reality that if I went back, everyone would say, "Asterisk, see? She threw a tantrum and ran away, but she came crawling back. Asterisk. And then what? I would be right back in that kitchen, cooking, doing laundry, rubbing her feet. And every time Liam and I argued, he would pull out the 'my mom went to the hospital because of you' card to crush me into submission." I spoke slowly, emphasizing every word. "Liam, I am not coming back. Your mother is sick. You take care of her. You are her son. I am not abandoning my responsibilities, but I cannot abandon my career either. He went dead silent for a few seconds before screaming, "You are a cold-blooded sociopath." I burst into tears. Am I cold-blooded? Or am I just refusing to slowly die in that house? You hit me. You drove me to the point where our bank account had $8 in it. You never once asked me if I was exhausted. Now you call me cold-blooded? All you ever do is list my faults, he yelled. Do you ever think about anyone but yourself? I thought about everyone else for 8 years. I choked out. Now, it is finally my turn to think about me. He cursed me out violently and hung up. I slumped to the floor, leaning my back against the bed frame, crying silently. I felt like I had just walked through a heavy door. Behind that door was the place I used to call family. In front of me was a terrifying, foggy, unknown road. But I knew that if I turned back around, I would never forgive myself. In the middle of the night, my mom texted me. Maya told me, "Your mother-in-law is in the hospital. Don't worry, you are not to blame. Your dad and I are healthy and fine here. Focus on your work." I clutched my phone to my chest and cried all over again. The next morning, I went into the London office early. I needed to bury myself in spreadsheets and meetings so I wouldn't be consumed by the emotional whiplash. While I was at my desk, I received a text from my mother-in-law. For the first time, she texted me directly without using her aggressive, screeching tone. Hannah, I am in the hospital. I don't blame you. I just want you to come home. Without you here, I am suffering so much. I stared at those words for a long time. I felt genuine pity for her. It was true. She was getting older, and she was entirely reliant on me running around doing everything for her. But I also saw with crystal clarity that in her text, it was still only about her time suffering, not mine. I texted back, Mom, I hope you recover quickly. I am working overseas and cannot return. Please take care of your health. She didn't reply again. That afternoon, my boss called me into his office. Hannah, I know things in your personal life are highly stressful right now, but this project requires your absolute focus. Are you going to be able to handle it? I nodded firmly. I can handle it. He looked at me and gave a small nod. If you need a few days off to manage things, just tell me. I shook my head. I don't want any time off. That night, I sat alone in my corporate apartment, eating instant ramen. I thought about my mother-in-law in the hospital. I thought about Liam sitting exhausted in the waiting room. I thought about the neighborhood gossip back in Chicago. I felt pain, but alongside that pain was something very strange. Absolute calmness. I knew that from the moment I said times I am not coming back. This marriage was fundamentally dead. It just didn't have the paperwork to prove it yet. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Mr. Davis, my lawyer. I would like to proceed with filing for divorce. After hitting send, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I didn't feel relief. I just felt exhausted, sad, and completely resolute. After sending that email to my lawyer, I didn't dare open my inbox for the rest of the night. I was terrified to see his response, terrified that everything was now officially real, with no way to back out. I sat in a chair staring at the ceiling, my mind completely blank. 8 years of marriage, and it turned out that all it took was one sentence in an email to begin shredding it into pieces. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Are you asleep yet, honey?" she asked. "Not yet, Mom," I answered, my voice raspy. "I've been thinking a lot," she said slowly. "Don't force yourself to be a stone wall. If you're hurting, tell me you're hurting. If you're scared, tell me you're scared. You don't need to pretend to be invincible." I bit my lip, fresh tears spilling over. "Mom, I'm just so tired." "I know," she replied softly. "If you're tired, rest, but don't go back to the place that made you so tired in the first place." I didn't say anything else. I just listened to her steady breathing on the other end of the line. It felt like she was sitting right next to me, rubbing my back like she did when I was a little girl. The next morning, Mr. Davis replied to my email. He stated he needed additional documentation, copies of my marriage certificate, my driver's license, my passport, the joint bank account statements, abusive text messages, and any evidence of domestic violence. He asked if I wanted to file a contested divorce immediately or attempt a settlement agreement first. Looking at the list of documents, my hands shook. Almost all those physical documents were locked in a drawer back at Liam's house in Chicago. Every single piece of paper felt like a chain tying me to that place. But I knew if I didn't step over this hurdle, I would be trapped forever. I texted my sister, Maya, Maya, I need some important documents. Can you go to my house and get them for me? Asterisk. She called me instantly. Are you absolutely sure about this? If Liam or his mother find out you're gathering documents for a divorce, they will explode. Are you sure? I'm sure, I said. Please just go grab them when they aren't home. She paused for a moment. Okay. I'll try to go during the day when they're out. That afternoon, I received a text from Liam. Asterisk. My mom was discharged from the hospital. Are you satisfied now? Asterisk, I read it and felt my heart turn to ice. I texted back, asterisk, I'm glad she's healthy. Asterisk, he replied almost instantly. Asterisk, do you not feel any guilt at all? The second she got home, she asked for you, and you couldn't even bother to check in. Asterisk, I exhaled. Asterisk, I asked about her condition, and I offered to help cover the hospital copay. Asterisk, asterisk, money, money, money. Asterisk, Liam, shot back. Asterisk, all you care about is money. Asterisk, I stared at the screen for a long time. Asterisk, Liam, all you care about is being a dutiful son to your mother. Did you ever once care about being a decent husband to your wife? Asterisk. He didn't reply again. That evening, Maya called me, her voice incredibly tense. Hannah, I just left your house. Did you get the papers? I asked anxiously. I got photocopies of your marriage license, your social security info, and the bank statements you had stashed in your desk drawer. She lowered her voice. But your mother-in-law caught me. She started screaming, and Liam came home right in the middle of it. My heart stopped. What? What happened? I told them I was just getting some HR documents for your corporate file. Maya laughed dryly. He didn't buy it. He demanded to know what you were doing. I told him you were working overseas and probably needed them for a visa application. I closed my eyes tightly. Maya, I am so sorry. I dragged you into my mess. What mess? She scoffed. This mess is worth it. She hesitated. But Hannah, he knows you're preparing something. He told me to tell you that he will not let you get away with this. I gave a sad smile. He's never let me get away with anything before either. Hanging up, a massive wave of exhaustion hit me. I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the window. It was raining in London again. I watched the water droplets smack against the glass, thinking about my mother-in-law just getting out of the hospital, Liam losing his mind back in Chicago, and me thousands of miles away across the Atlantic, still being violently yanked backward into their orbit. 2 days later, Mr. Davis emailed me the preliminary draft of the divorce petition. I opened the PDF and saw my name and Liam's name sitting side by side under the headers, Times Petitioner Times, and Times Respondent Asterisk. My chest tightened. We had signed our names next to each other on our marriage license with so much hope. Now, we were signing them to end it all. I printed the document to sign it. My signature was shaky, not smooth and confident like usual. But I didn't erase it, and I didn't reprint it. I wanted to keep that shaky ink to remind myself exactly what I had to survive to get here. That evening, Liam called. His voice was no longer yelling. It was freezing cold. Are you really going through with this? I knew he had received notice from my lawyer. Yes. You actually filed for divorce, he asked. I'm in the process of finalizing the paperwork. He gave a cynical laugh. You're unbelievable. You go overseas for a few weeks, think you're some big shot, and now you demand a divorce. I was exhausted. Liam, I'm not demanding anything. I just refuse to live that way anymore. Live what way? He growled. Being a wife and a daughter-in-law? Being hit, I said. Having our joint account drained to $8. Having absolutely zero say in our finances. Being treated like a live-in maid. He was silent for a few seconds before blurting out, "You exaggerate everything. I barely even hit you." "Once is hitting," I replied. "Every woman gets slapped by her husband when he loses his temper," he said, deadpan. That sentence made my blood run absolutely cold. I understood in that exact moment. He fundamentally did not believe he was abusive. He just thought I was overreacting. "Liam, if you truly believe that, then there is nothing left to say," I said. "My lawyer will communicate with you from now on." He scoffed harshly. "You think a contested divorce is easy? You're in a different country. I won't sign a damn thing. What are you going to do?" "I'll file for a contested divorce and cite domestic violence," I replied. "Don't even dream about it," he threatened. "I am not going to let you drag my name through the mud and label me as an abusive husband. When you slapped me, you labeled yourself," I said. He screamed a string of violent curses at me and hung up. I set the phone down, my hands like ice. I wasn't angry. I was just profoundly sad. Sad that the man I had once loved and trusted was spewing such horrific things without an ounce of shame. The next day, Maya texted me. Asterisk. "Your mother-in-law has completely lost it. She's walking up and down your street telling all the neighbors that you abandoned her son and that you're over in Europe sleeping with other men." Asterisk, I closed my eyes. I had expected this. "How are people reacting?" I asked. "Some believe her, some don't," Maya replied. "A few of the older ladies in the neighborhood have heard Liam screaming at you before. They aren't taking her side." I exhaled slowly. "Maya, please don't argue with her on my behalf. I don't want to cause a public scene. You always just endure it. You always swallow your anger. Stop enduring it." That night, my mother-in-law called me. Her voice shook with a mix of fury and intense victimization. "Hannah, are you seriously trying to drive me into an early grave?" I swallowed hard. "Mom, I am not driving anyone anywhere. You filed for divorce, didn't you?" she shrieked. "Do you have any humanity left? In the 8 years you lived in this house, did I ever treat you badly?" I bit my lip. I had no desire to debate this. "Mom, I just cannot be your daughter-in-law anymore." "You ungrateful bitch," she screamed. "Without this family, what the hell are you?" That insult hurt worse than another physical slap. "Mom, I work for a living. I support myself. I don't freeload off anyone. If it weren't for Liam's generosity to you, I wouldn't have been the primary breadwinner. If it weren't for Liam, you wouldn't be where you are today," she hollered. I laughed out loud, but tears streamed down my face. "Mom, I worked my way up the corporate ladder for 8 years, entirely on my own merit. I didn't rely on Liam for a single promotion." She cursed me out for a solid minute, and then delivered a threat that made my heart stop. "If you dare go through with this divorce, I will go straight to your company's headquarters and cause a massive scene. I will ruin you." I started shaking uncontrollably. "Mom, do not do that." "Then don't push me," she snarled. "You fly back here, you apologize to me, and we will pretend none of this ever happened." I was silent for a very long time. Then, I spoke, my voice tiny but rigid as steel. "Mom, I am not coming back." She shrieked in rage and slammed the phone down. I sank to the floor, paralyzed by fear. For the first time since deciding to divorce, I was genuinely terrified. Not of Liam hitting me, but of my mother-in-law causing a psychotic scene at my office building in Chicago. I was terrified my professional reputation would be destroyed. I was terrified my parents would be dragged into the collateral damage. I called my mom. "Mom, Liam's mother threatened to go to my corporate office and cause a scene to get me fired." My mom went quiet for a moment. "Don't be afraid. You haven't done anything wrong. Why should you be afraid?" "But I'm overseas. I can't be there to manage it, and I'm so scared they'll come after you and Dad. Your dad and I are right here," my mom said, her voice dropping into a fierce, protective growl. "If they dare step foot on our property to cause a scene, I am not going to let them get away with it." I choked on a sob. "Mom, I am so sorry for dragging you and Dad into this nightmare." "You are my daughter," my mom replied simply. "Your battles are our battles." Hanging up, My heart ached, but also felt incredibly warm. That night, Mr. Davis messaged me. Asterisk. We are officially filing the petition this week. The opposing party will almost certainly escalate their pressure tactics. Brace yourself. Asterisk. I read the message and sat completely still. I knew the worst of the storm was still brewing off the coast, but I also knew I had completely burned the bridge back. I opened the window, letting the freezing London wind hit my face. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I didn't know what my future held. I only knew that going back to that house with Liam and his mother was absolutely not a part of it. 3 days later, Mr. Davis texted me. Asterisk. The court has accepted the filing. We expect Liam to receive the official summons within the next week or two. Asterisk. Reading that text made my heart pound wildly. It felt like dropping a massive weight, while simultaneously pushing myself out into the eye of a Category 5 hurricane. From this moment on, it wasn't just idle threats or marital bickering, it was the legal system. It was black ink on white paper. That afternoon, Maya called me. Her voice was frantic. Hannah, are you braced for this? What happened now? I asked, my intuition screaming that something was terribly wrong. Your mother-in-law just dragged Liam's uncle and his cousin over to Mom and Dad's house. Maya spoke rapidly. They came to talk, but I could hear it through the phone. It was intensely aggressive. I shot up from my chair. What are they doing at Mom and Dad's house? She was crying hysterically, playing the victim, saying you abandoned your husband, claiming you're having an affair in Europe, and telling Mom and Dad they failed at raising a decent daughter. Maya Seahill heavily. Dad was furious, but he kept his composure. My hands shook so violently, I almost dropped the phone. What did Dad say? Dad told them, if my daughter committed a crime or had an affair, show me the proof. If you don't have proof, get off my porch and stop slandering her. And Mom? Mom was just crying, inside the house. My chest tightened painfully. And then what happened? The uncle and the cousin tried to play the peacemakers, saying a divorce shouldn't be rushed and shouldn't be blown out of proportion. But your mother-in-law was screaming that you've brought immense shame to the Smith family. I closed my eyes. I had predicted they would drag extended family into this, to exert pressure, but hearing it actually happen felt like a knife twisting in my heart. Maya, what am I supposed to do? I asked, my voice trembling. You don't need to do a damn thing, she replied. Dad made it crystal clear that this is between you and Liam, and outsiders have no right to force you into anything. But Hannah, they aren't going to let this go easily. I hung up, sitting in a daze. I pictured my mom crying in her living room, my dad trying to maintain his stoic composure in front of Liam's aggressive relatives, and it felt like my heart was being sliced open. I called my mom. She answered quickly. Don't worry about us, honey. I'm fine. I am so sorry, Mom, I sobbed. Because of me, you have to endure this humiliation. What humiliation? My mom's voice was much harder than I expected. I am only sad that they look down on you and that they look down on our family. Is Dad okay? Your dad is pissed, but he isn't saying much. My mom sighed. Just focus on your job in London. Let us handle things on this end. I choked up. If they come back, let them come, my mom said. I won't chase them off with a broom, but I am certainly not going to bow down to them. Hanging up, I felt a bizarre mix of agony and a strange, newfound strength. I realized that for 8 years, I had shouldered the entire burden of that toxic marriage completely alone, forgetting that behind me stood my parents, my own blood family. That evening, Liam called. His voice was raspy, exhausted, but laced with immense irritation. You're real proud of yourself, aren't you? Letting my mom and my relatives go over to your parents' house? I let out a bitter laugh. Do you honestly think I told them to go over there? If it wasn't you, why did my mom have their address? He snapped. Liam, your mom has had my parents' address since our wedding day, I retorted. Don't pin her psycho behavior on me. Are you trying to humiliate my family this badly? He yelled, making sure the whole neighborhood knows, the whole extended family. I didn't want this, I said, but I'm not hiding anymore either. Just come back and apologize to my mom, he pleaded, shifting tactics. If you just come back and say one word of apology, this all goes away." I remained silent for a few seconds. "Liam, I am not apologizing for being hit. I am not apologizing for having my finances controlled. I am not apologizing for being treated like dirt." "You always drag that stuff back up," he growled. "I told you. I just lost my temper in the heat of the moment." "How many heat of the moments have there been, Liam?" I asked. He went quiet, then lowered his voice. "Just come home. I promise, from now on I won't lay a hand on you. You can manage the money. I'll even talk to my mom and make her back off." I closed my eyes. I had waited to hear those exact words for years, but now they arrived far, far too late. "Liam, you've said this exact same thing to me 3 times now. This time is real," he begged. "You said it was real all 3 times," I replied. "But afterward, you still hit me. You still transferred all our money to your mother." He started breathing heavily. "You really don't trust me anymore, do you?" "No," I said, barely a whisper. The other end of the line was dead silent for a very long time. And then he spat out a sentence that sent a literal chill down my spine. "If you don't come back, I am going to make sure you lose your job." I started shaking. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you," he said coldly. "I'm giving you advanced warning. Did you think just because you ran off to Europe, I couldn't touch you? I know people." I took a deep breath. "Liam, you are digging your own grave. You think the law is going to protect you," he scoffed cynically. I didn't say anything else. I hung up. My hands were shaking, my heart racing. I knew he wasn't just talking to hear himself speak. He had already initiated a counterattack. I immediately called Mr. Davis. He threatened to get me fired. Mr. Davis paused for a second. "Document everything. Keep a log of every call and save every text message. If he attempts to interfere with your employment, that is highly detrimental to his case in family court." "I'm terrified he's actually going to do it," I said. "Don't panic yourself into a corner," the lawyer said calmly. "You work for a major multinational corporation. He cannot easily manipulate them." I hung up, staring blankly ahead. I saw clearly that the moment I stopped being submissive, Liam revealed his true, horrifying face. Threatening, controlling, exerting pressure on my parents, and now my livelihood. 2 days later, Maya texted me. Hannah, they went back to mom and dad's house. I immediately called my mom. "Mom, did they come over again?" "Yes," my mom said, sounding incredibly tired. "This time, your father-in-law came too." "What did he say, Mom?" "He didn't yell," my mom sighed. "He actually spoke much more reasonably than your mother-in-law. He said that if a young couple has conflicts, they should resolve them privately within the family, not drag it into a public courtroom and make everyone look bad." "How did Dad respond?" "Your dad said, 'My daughter gets physically beaten and financially drained, and you call that a minor family conflict,'" my mom stated. "After your dad said that, your father-in-law shut up completely." I choked up. I could vividly picture the scene. 2 older men sitting across from each other. One defending his daughter with everything he had, the other hearing for the very first time that his son was a wife-beater. I didn't know what my father-in-law was thinking, but I knew the truth was finally out in the open. "And what did your mother-in-law do?" I asked. "She started shrieking. 'Calling you a liar, saying you made the whole thing up,' my mom replied. I stepped in. I told her, 'If my daughter made it up, why have your neighbors heard her crying in pain on multiple occasions?' I held my breath. She shut her mouth instantly after that," my mom said with a hint of steel in her voice. I burst into tears. "Mom, I am so sorry for making you have to say those things. You have nothing to apologize for," she said. "My only regret is that I spent years telling you to just endure it." Hanging up, my heart ached, but a significant weight had been lifted. At least my parents had stood up and spoken the truths I had swallowed for 8 years. That afternoon, my boss in London called me onto a secure video conference. I was tense, immediately thinking of Liam's threat. "Hannah, someone from the US, contacted our Chicago HR headquarters today, claiming to be your husband," my boss said directly. "He claimed you have abandoned your family responsibilities, that you are mentally unstable, and he formally requested the company reconsider your position and overseas assignment. I felt all the blood rush to my face. I am so sorry, sir. That is a private, personal matter. We know, my boss said. And as a company, we do not interfere in personal domestic disputes. But he is escalating this. He sent mass emails to several HR directors. I clenched my fists under the desk. How is the company handling this? HR formally replied to him, stating that an employee's personal life has no bearing on their professional competency. He looked at me through the screen. But Hannah, you need to resolve this decisively. He is actively harassing our corporate offices. I nodded, my throat tight. I apologize for bringing this disruption to the firm. You don't need to apologize, my boss said firmly. But if he continues, corporate legal is considering sending a cease and desist. I walked out of the conference room, my legs feeling like jelly. Liam had actually done it. He didn't just threaten, he actively tried to sabotage my career. I messaged Mr. Davis and forwarded the information about the HR emails. He replied almost instantly. Asterisk. Excellent. This is documented proof of post-separation harassment and tortious interference with your employment. Save all communications from your company's HR department. Asterisk. I let out a bitter, cynical laugh. Asterisk. Excellent. Asterisk. It hurt to hear that word. It turned out that Liam's most disgusting, vindictive tactics were exactly what gave me the legal leverage to escape him. That night, Liam called again. Thought I couldn't touch you, huh? He mocked. I just did. I replied, my voice freezing cold. If you want me to come back, stop. Come back, and I stop, he demanded. It's that simple. You are trying to blackmail me, I stated. Call it whatever you want, he replied. Are you going to choose your precious career? Or are you going to choose your family? I took a deep breath. Liam, you are only proving to me that I made the right decision. He was quiet for a few seconds, then screamed a barrage of profanities at me before slamming the phone down. I sat down, my head spinning. I wasn't afraid like before. I just saw with absolute clarity that this man, if I ever returned to him, would use even more monstrous methods to keep me imprisoned. I called my mom. Mom, he actually called my corporate HR department. My mom sighed. I figured you were terrified he'd go all the way. Don't be afraid. The more afraid you act, the more he will push. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Mom, I am never going back to him. Good, she replied. Your dad and I support you 100%. Hanging up, I felt a bizarre sense of absolute calm. I knew that from this point forward, things were going to get significantly uglier before they got better. But I also knew I was no longer fighting this war alone. I opened my laptop and drafted a brief, professional incident report for my HR department, explaining my pending divorce and my husband's retaliatory harassment. I attached screenshots of his threatening text messages. I didn't want the company to only hear Liam's fabricated narrative. After hitting send, I sat in silence. I thought back to the slap, to the $8 balance, to his casual dismissal. Asterisk, every woman gets slapped by her husband when he loses his temper. Asterisk, everything lined up into one clear, irrefutable reality. I had been living in a violently abusive marriage, and I had spent years gaslighting myself into believing it wasn't that bad. Now, with Liam using those exact same abusive tactics to threaten my livelihood from across an ocean, I finally saw his true face in its entirety. I didn't cry anymore. I just felt a strange, ironclad determination settle in my chest. Even if I had to fight him to the bitter end in a courtroom, I was never going back. I barely slept that night. I lay staring at the ceiling of my London apartment, listening to the rain against the window pane, my mind racing with a chaotic montage of images. My mom crying in her living room, my dad trying to maintain his dignity in front of my aggressive in-laws, Liam calling my corporate HR department to sabotage my career, my boss looking at me with a mix of sympathy and corporate concern. It all formed a massive, suffocating knot in my chest that I couldn't swallow down and couldn't cough up. Early the next morning, I received a text from my lawyer. Asterisk. We have formally served Liam's legal counsel. If he continues to harass you and your family, We are prepared to file an emergency motion for a restraining order. Asterisk. Reading that made my heart physically ache. A restraining order. That meant things had escalated to a terrifying, criminal level. I never wanted to turn my marriage into a vicious legal war, but Liam was dragging us right into the trenches. I was about to reply when my phone rang. It was my dad. "Hey, kiddo," he said, his voice trying to sound casual. "Did you eat breakfast yet?" "Not yet. I woke up late." "Eat something," he ordered gently. "I have to tell you something." My heart pounded. "What's wrong, Dad?" "Your father-in-law called me yesterday," he said slowly. "He apologized for letting his wife and relatives cause a scene at our house." I was stunned. "He apologized?" "Yeah." My dad sighed heavily. "He said he genuinely didn't know Liam was hitting you. He said if he had known earlier, he would have beaten some sense into the boy himself." Tears pricked my eyes. I never expected my father-in-law to call my dad. "Did he say anything else, Dad?" "He said that if you two really can't make it work anymore, you should divorce amicably and stop torturing each other." My dad paused, but he also admitted that your mother-in-law absolutely refuses to accept it. I gave a sad smile. "I know. I only said one thing to him," my dad continued. "I told him, my daughter is not a piece of property that your family can keep when you want her and beat when you're angry." He was completely silent for a long time after that. I burst into tears. "Dad, I am so sorry." "Sorry for what?" he chided gently. "I'm the one who's sorry I didn't realize you were suffering so much." I couldn't speak. I just listened to my dad's steady breathing over the line, feeling a deep mix of agony and warmth. At the very least, my father-in-law had heard the truth, and at least he hadn't tried to completely whitewash it like his wife had. I hung up and messaged Mr. Davis about the phone call from my father-in-law. He replied, "Asterisk, this is a good sign. If his father acts as a mediator, we might be able to reach a settlement agreement faster." Asterisk, I wasn't that optimistic. I knew the person calling the shots wasn't my father-in-law. It was Liam and his mother. Sure enough, by noon, Liam sent me a massive text block. Asterisk, my dad talked to your dad. Don't think just because my dad took your side that you've won. My mom said she would rather die than let you shame our family by abandoning your husband. Asterisk, I read it and felt utterly exhausted. I texted back, asterisk, I don't need to win. I just need a divorce. Asterisk, asterisk. You really are a cold-blooded bitch. Asterisk, he replied. Asterisk, 8 years of marriage, and you can just throw it away like this. Asterisk, I stared at the screen for a long time before typing. Asterisk, 8 years of marriage, and you could hit me. Asterisk, he didn't reply again. That afternoon, Maya called me. "Hannah, brace yourself." "What now, Maya?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Your mother-in-law dragged a bunch of relatives to Mom and Dad's house again. This time, they brought protest signs." I froze in absolute horror. "Protest signs?" "Yeah," Maya spoke rapidly. They made signs saying, "Justice for the Smith family betrayed by their daughter-in-law." They stood on the lawn, recording videos and live streaming it on Facebook. My head spun. "Are Mom and Dad okay?" "Dad absolutely lost it," she said. "He called the precinct. The cops came and filed a police report." I was shaking uncontrollably. "Where is Mom?" "She's inside crying. I'm over here with them now." Tears flooded my face. "Maya, I am so sorry. I am so sorry to Mom and Dad." "What good is sorry right now?" she snapped, her voice a mix of fury and intense sympathy. "Hannah, they are completely unhinged. They are determined to publicly destroy your reputation at all costs." I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. I couldn't form words. That evening, Mr. Davis called me. "The opposing party has escalated to public defamation. This is a very serious development. We can file an emergency motion requesting the court to issue a protective order against harassment and defamation protecting you and your immediate family." "Will it actually stop them?" I asked, exhausted. "Not immediately," he admitted, "but it creates a massive legal liability for them. Every time they violate it, they severely damage their own standing in the divorce proceedings." I closed my eyes. I was just terrified my parents wouldn't be able to handle the public humiliation. You can request the court to expedite the hearings, the lawyer advised, and I strongly recommend you consider flying back to Chicago to attend the first mediation session in person. I jolted. Fly back? Being there in person will significantly strengthen your position, he said, but I understood what that meant. I was terrified of facing them. I stayed silent. I wasn't just afraid of facing Liam and my mother-in-law. I was afraid of the judgmental stares of the neighborhood, afraid of stepping foot anywhere near that house, afraid of being sucked back into the role of the submissive, obedient wife. Let me think about it, I said. That night, Liam texted me, asterisk, see what you caused. You made my entire family lose their minds. Come back and apologize to my mom. Just come back, and I'll make them stop all of this. Asterisk, I read the text, my hands shaking. I knew he was the puppet master behind all these psychotic stunts. I texted back. Asterisk, you are using your family to extort me. Asterisk, asterisk. Call it whatever you want. Asterisk, he replied. Asterisk, are you going to choose your parents' public reputation, or are you going to choose your stupid divorce? Asterisk, I broke down crying. Asterisk, you are a monster. Asterisk, asterisk, you're the monster. Asterisk, he shot back. Asterisk, you abandoned my sick mother, abandoned your husband, abandoned your family. You deserve everything happening to you. Asterisk, I didn't reply. I took screenshots of the entire exchange and emailed them to my lawyer. I called my dad. Dad! They brought protest signs to our lawn. My dad was silent for a few seconds. I know. Dad, I am so sorry. You did nothing wrong, my dad said, his voice hard as iron. My only regret is that I didn't press charges for trespassing the minute they stepped on my grass. I choked on my tears. Please don't argue with them, Dad. I didn't argue with them, he replied flatly. I called the cops. I let out a wet laugh through my tears. That was my dad. No screaming, no drama, just quietly and fiercely protecting his daughter. I am not going to let anyone humiliate my little girl, my dad said. That sentence made me cry harder than I ever had in my life. That night, my mom called me. How are you holding up, honey? I asked. I'm fine, she said, though her voice was incredibly hoarse. I'm just sad. I'm sorry, Mom. I don't need your apologies, she replied firmly. I just need you to promise me you won't go back to him out of pity or guilt. I bit my lip. I'm terrified you and Dad won't be able to handle the public pressure. We can handle this pressure, she said. But if you go back to that house, you won't survive the pressure they put on times you asterisk. I closed my eyes. Mom, I'm not going back. Good, she said. I believe you. I hung up, sitting completely still. I saw I was standing at a brutal crossroads. I could fly back, apologize, and make all the harassment stop so my parents could live in peace, but I would be condemning myself to return to that kitchen, that $8 bank account, and the inevitable next slap. Or I could fight this to the bitter end. Let my parents endure a little more temporary neighborhood drama, but win my absolute freedom. I knew exactly what I had to choose. The next morning, I emailed my lawyer. Asterisk, I agreed to return to Chicago for the mediation hearing. Asterisk, he replied. Asterisk, excellent. We will begin preparations. Asterisk, I put my phone down, my hands trembling, my heart racing. I was about to fly back to the United States. I was about to face Liam, my mother-in-law, and an entire extended family that viewed me as public enemy number one. I was terrified, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't running away. I looked out the window. The London sky was gray, the wind was howling. I thought about the day I would step off the plane at O'Hare, dragging my suitcase straight into the eye of the storm. I told myself, asterisk, Hannah. This time, you cannot retreat a single inch. Asterisk. I booked my flight back to Chicago on a morning when a light drizzle was falling over London. When I clicked the confirmation button, my hands were shaking so badly I had to click it twice. The itinerary popped up on the screen. My name, the departure time, destination, O'Hare International. Staring at those words, my heart clamped tight. It felt like I was voluntarily tying myself to the mast of a ship, heading straight into a naval battle I had spent months trying to avoid. I texted my mom, Mom, I'm coming home. Asterisk, she replied almost instantly. Asterisk, when does your flight land? Asterisk, in 3 days, Mom. Asterisk, she was silent for a few minutes before texting back. Asterisk, okay. Your dad and I will be at the airport to pick you up. Asterisk, looking at the words times your dad and I will be at the airport to pick you up. Asterisk, tears flooded my eyes. I wasn't flying back to fix things with my in-laws. I wasn't flying back to apologize. I was flying back to my parents. I knew that no matter how many people outside were cursing my name, inside that house, I still had a safe place to land. I also emailed my lawyer. He replied, Asterisk, good. Fly back 2 days before the scheduled mediation. We will meet in person to review the case file and prep. Asterisk, I did not text Liam. I didn't want him to know what day I was landing. I was terrified he would pull some psychotic stunt at the arrivals gate or drag his mother to the airport to ambush me the second I stepped off the plane. Those 3 days dragged by with agonizing slowness. I repacked my suitcase, leaving unnecessary things behind, bringing only the essentials. Every time I folded a blouse, I thought about the last 8 years. I thought about the clothes I had bought with my own hard-earned savings, only to be shamed into never wearing them because my mother-in-law sneered, Asterisk, why are you dressing up? You just need to stay home and do your chores. Asterisk. Those clothes now sat neatly in my suitcase, as if I was finally gathering up the scattered pieces of my own identity. The night before my flight, my boss called me. Hannah, are you absolutely sure you need to fly back right now? He asked, his voice laced with concern. Yes, I'm sure, I replied. I know things in your personal life are incredibly volatile right now, he said. But I want you to know, the company is holding your position here in London. Go handle your business at home, and then come back. I choked up. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. You do excellent work, Hannah, he said. Do not let anyone destroy your career. I hung up, sitting in stunned silence. I never imagined there would come a day when the people protecting me were my corporate bosses, HR departments, and lawyers, rather than the man I married. The next morning, I headed to Heathrow. The sky was bleak, the wind biting. I dragged my suitcase through the check-in line, feeling completely hollow. As the plane took off, I watched the city shrink beneath the clouds, wondering who I would be when I returned to it, a legally divorced woman, or someone still violently shackled to that toxic house. Over 10 hours later, the plane touched down at O'Hare. As the terminal doors slid open, the familiar, slightly humid scent of Chicago air filled my lungs. I pulled my suitcase out, my heart hammering wildly. I was terrified of seeing Liam waiting for me. I was terrified of seeing my mother-in-law, but there was no one there. Only my parents, standing at the very end of the barricade. My dad was wearing his old, faded flannel shirt. My mom was wearing a light cardigan despite the warm terminal. Hannah, my dad called out. My mom practically sprinted forward and threw her arms around me. My baby girl. I buried my face in my mom's shoulder and sobbed uncontrollably. My dad stood beside us, gently patting my back. You're home. That's all that matters. Sitting in the backseat of my dad's car on the drive to their suburb, I looked at the familiar yet strange streets. I hadn't been back in months, and everything looked exactly the same. But I was different. I felt like someone who had just survived a Category 5 hurricane, still trembling, but entirely unwilling to ever turn back. When we arrived at their house, I set my suitcase down and looked around the living room. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The old oak coffee table, the wicker armchair, the grandfather clock ticking on the wall. My heart immediately felt soothed. Asterisk. This times was home. That evening, Maya came over. You're finally back. She pulled me into a fierce hug, then pulled back to look at me. You've lost so much weight. I offered a sad smile. Lost weight, but I'm not dead yet. You stubborn brat, she said, swatting my shoulder gently. I'm driving you to your lawyer's office tomorrow morning. Okay. She lowered her voice. Does your husband's family know you're back? No, I replied, but I'm sure they'll find out by tomorrow. Maya sighed. Your mother-in-law is practically stalking the neighborhood waiting for you. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. That night, I lay in my old childhood bed, listening to the ceiling fan rattle and the distant sound of a dog barking. My heart was still racing. I knew that starting tomorrow, I was going to have to face all of them head-on. The next morning, Maya drove me downtown to Mr. Davis's office. He shook my hand and looked me dead in the eye. Hannah, are you mentally prepared for this? I am ready, I said, though my hands were trembling slightly. He handed me a binder containing the entire case file, the divorce petition, the evidence of domestic violence, the bank statements showing the $8.00 balance, the threatening text messages, the HR incident report, the police report from my parents' house, and photos of the protest signs on their lawn. With this mountain of evidence, you have an overwhelming legal advantage, he stated. But the opposing party is almost certainly going to escalate their psychological warfare. I can handle it, I replied. The mediation hearing is scheduled for 3 days from now, he continued. Liam was served the summons. My heart clenched. How did he react? He called my office and screamed at me for a solid 2 minutes, the lawyer said casually, as if talking about the weather. He claimed I was brainwashing his wife into abandoning him. I let out a bitter, cynical laugh. He always believed someone else was putting ideas in my head. It was his ultimate defense mechanism to avoid taking any accountability. Remember, Mr. Davis advised. During the mediation, do not argue with them. Do not engage emotionally. You simply state the facts. I nodded. On the drive back to the suburbs, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. I immediately guessed who it was. I answered it. Hannah. Liam's voice was freezing cold. You're back in the States, aren't you? I swallowed hard. Yes. You really think you're something, don't you? He scoffed. Flying back just to blow up our entire family in front of everyone? I flew back to finalize my divorce, I said. Get your ass back to my house right now, he ordered. My mom wants to see you. I closed my eyes. I am not going to your house. Do you even consider me your husband? He yelled. Did you consider me your wife when you slapped me? When you transferred all our money to your mother? When you tried to get me fired from my job? I demanded. He was dead silent for a few seconds before blurting out, Just come home. I swear to God. This is my final offer. I gave a sad, exhausted laugh. You've made a lot of final offers, Liam. I'm not coming. My mom is going to go back to your parents' house. I swear to God, he threatened. I started shaking. Do not do that, Liam. Then get your ass home, he snarled. I took a deep breath. Liam, everything is in the hands of the court now. He screamed a string of violent profanities at me and slammed the phone down. I stood on the sidewalk, my hands shaking, my heart hammering. Maya grabbed my hand. Don't be scared, she said fiercely. He's completely out of moves. I nodded, but my stomach was tied in knots. That afternoon, my mother-in-law actually showed up at my parents' house. She stood at the front gate, pounding on it furiously. Hannah, get your ass out here right now. My mom stood in the living room, looking at me, her voice trembling. Are you going to go out there? I took a deep breath. I'm going. I walked out to the front gate. She looked me up and down, her eyes bloodshot and filled with venom. You fly back to America, and you don't even come to your husband's house. What the hell kind of respect do you have for this family? She screamed. I spoke quietly but clearly. Mom, I came back to get a divorce. You ungrateful, treacherous bitch, she shrieked. I housed you and fed you for 8 years, and you turn around and bite the hand that feeds you? I bit my lip. You didn't feed me, Mom. I worked a full-time job and funded this entire family. She slapped me. The slap wasn't as hard as Liam's, but it was forceful enough to make my cheek burn instantly. My entire family froze in shock. My dad stormed out of the house. What the hell do you think you're doing? My mother-in-law screamed back. She's an insolent brat. She needed to be taught a lesson. I stood paralyzed, my hands shaking, tears flooding my eyes. I never imagined that on my very first day back in the country, I would be physically struck again this time by my mother-in-law. My dad pointed a furious finger toward the street. "Get the hell off my property right now. I am calling the police this second." She kept screaming, but neighbors were already starting to gather on their lawns, watching the spectacle. Finally, she turned and stormed off, screaming curses over her shoulder as she walked down the sidewalk. I collapsed onto the front porch steps, burying my face in my hands and sobbing hysterically. My mom wrapped her arms around me. "Do you see now? If you went back to that house, it would be 1,000 times worse." I couldn't speak. I just knew that the slap she just delivered had permanently extinguished any microscopic, lingering sliver of hope I had left in my soul. I texted my lawyer, detailing the physical assault by my mother-in-law on my parents' property. He replied, "Excellent. This is documented physical violence by the respondent's immediate family. Did you take a picture of your face?" I laughed hysterically through my tears. Excellent again. I took a selfie of the bright red handprint developing on my cheek and emailed it to him. Looking at the mark in the mirror, I saw with absolute clarity that the bridge back to the Smith family was now permanently, irreparably burned to ash. I barely slept that night. My left cheek still pulsed with a dull, stinging heat from my mother-in-law's slap. It wasn't excruciating pain, but it was enough that every time I shifted on my pillow, my heart physically ached. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to my parents whispering anxiously in the living room, and my chest felt incredibly heavy. I knew that from the exact second she raised her hand and struck me standing right on my parents' front property line, right in front of my own mother and father. Every single door to mediation, no matter how fragile, had been permanently slammed shut. The next morning, Maya drove me back to Mr. Davis's office. He looked at the faint red mark still visible on my cheek and frowned. "Did you take the photo?" "I took it last night and emailed it to you," I said, handing him my phone just in case. He nodded approvingly. "Excellent. We have yet another documented instance of physical violence. The mediation hearing tomorrow is going to be incredibly difficult for opposing counsel to navigate." I gave a sad smile. "I don't want to mediate anymore." "You don't have to," he assured me. "You just need to remain completely calm." At noon, Liam called. "Hannah, my mom just lost her temper," he said, his voice bizarrely gentle. "Why are you blowing this out of proportion?" I let out a soft, incredulous laugh. "Your mom lost her temper and slapped me. You lost your temper and tried to get me fired from my job. You lost your temper and brought protest signs to my parents' house. Your entire family just loses their temper all the time." He was quiet for a few seconds. "Just come back to my house." "My mom is crying." "I am not coming back," I said flatly. "Are you seriously going to drag us through a public courtroom trial?" he growled. "Yes," I replied. "You have absolutely zero loyalty or decency left," he spat. "My loyalty was beaten out of me, drained out of my bank account, and slandered across my neighborhood," I said. He fell silent and then hung up. That afternoon, my father-in-law called. "Hannah." His voice was exhausted and frail. "I heard what happened. I heard my wife went to your parents' house and struck you." I swallowed hard. "Yes, I am so sorry," he said. "I couldn't stop her." "I don't blame you, Dad," I replied honestly. He let out a long, ragged sigh. "Do not come back to this house, Hannah. I can't defend you anymore. It's too far gone." Those words lodged in my throat. I knew that was the final, tragic admission from the only decent person in that house that my marriage was truly, irrevocably dead. The next morning was the mandatory mediation hearing at the Cook County Family Courthouse. I wore a crisp white button-down shirt, black slacks, and pulled my hair into a neat ponytail. I wore absolutely zero makeup. I wanted to walk into that room exactly as I was, the real me, hiding nothing. My parents sat on a bench in the hallway outside. Maya squeezed my hand. "Don't be afraid." I nodded. The heavy wooden door opened, and I walked in. Liam was already seated at the opposing table, his face tight and anxious. His mother sat right behind him, her arms crossed over her chest, glaring at me with eyes that looked ready to murder me. My father-in-law sat alone in the very back row, his head bowed. The mediator, judge, looked at me. Miss Hannah, you are filing for a contested divorce. What are your primary grounds? I took a deep breath. Domestic violence, severe financial abuse and control, post-separation harassment, and terroristic threats. The judge turned to Liam. Mr. Liam, what is your response? Liam jumped to his feet. I just lost my temper in the heat of the moment. Every married couple argues. She is blowing everything wildly out of proportion. Mr. Davis, my attorney, stood up and began methodically presenting the evidence. He submitted the photo of my bruised face from Liam's slap. He submitted the bank records, showing the $8 joint account balance against Liam's $120K salary transfers. He submitted printouts of the threatening text messages. He submitted the HR incident report from my London office. He submitted the police report from my parents' house. He submitted the photos of the protest signs. And finally, he submitted the time-stamped photo of my red, swollen cheek from his mother's assault just 2 days prior. The entire room fell into a suffocating silence. The judge turned a hard glare onto Liam. How do you explain calling your wife's corporate HR department to file fabricated, slanderous complaints against her? Liam stammered, his face flushing. I just wanted her company to know the truth. The truth about what? The judge pressed. You claimed she was having an affair. Do you have a shred of evidence to support that claim? Liam was silent. The judge then turned his attention to my mother-in-law. Ma'am, did you physically assault Miss Hannah 2 days ago on her parents' property? She gritted her teeth and snarled. She was being insolent. I had to teach her a lesson. The judge's eyebrows shot up. What legal authority do you believe you possess to physically strike your daughter-in-law? She immediately shut her mouth. Suddenly, my father-in-law raised his head from the back row. His voice was gravelly and broken. Your Honor, my son is in the wrong. His wife did not deserve to be treated this way. My mother-in-law whipped around in her chair. Shut your mouth! The room erupted into chaotic murmurs. The judge banged his gavel, demanding order in the court. He then turned back to me. Miss Hannah, do you have any desire whatsoever to attempt reconciliation? I looked him dead in the eye. Absolutely not. Mr. Liam, do you desire reconciliation? Liam looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. Yes, but she refuses to come home. The judge let out a heavy sigh, looking at the mountain of evidence on his desk. Given the overwhelming evidence presented today, the possibility of mediation is virtually zero. The hearing concluded in less than an hour. As we filed out into the hallway, my mother-in-law lunged toward me, jabbing her finger inches from my face. You ungrateful bitch. You humiliated our entire family. My dad stepped smoothly in front of me, shielding me with his body. Back away from her. I let my son marry her. We housed her and fed her for 8 years, she shrieked hysterically. I spoke up, my voice shaking but ringing clear down the courthouse hall. You didn't feed me. I worked full-time and funded your entire lifestyle. She raised her hand, preparing to slap me again right there in the courthouse. This time, 2 court bailiffs sprinted over and grabbed her arms, pinning them to her sides. You raise your hand one more time, ma'am, and you are leaving this building in handcuffs, one of the officers barked. She screamed in rage, but didn't dare move her arms again. My father-in-law stood frozen a few feet away, his eyes red and glassy. Enough, Martha. Just stop. Liam stood paralyzed, his face the color of ash. That evening, Mr. Davis called me. The judge recorded everything on the official record. It is highly likely your petition for a contested divorce will be granted swiftly. And the restraining order? I asked. We formally filed the emergency motion today, he said. Given that she attempted to physically assault you inside a federal courthouse in front of bailiffs, the probability of it being granted is exceptionally high. I let out a long, trembling exhale. 2 days later, local police officers arrived at my parents' house and handed me the official, court-ordered temporary order of protection against both Liam and his mother. They were legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me, my workplace, or my parents' property, until the final divorce decree was issued. I stared at the thick legal document in my hands, my fingers shaking. Liam violated it almost instantly by calling me. "Are you seriously taking it this far?" He screamed into the phone. "You hit me, and your mother hit me," I stated coldly. "What exactly did you expect?" "You are pure evil," he cursed. "I just don't want to be beaten anymore," I replied. He went dead silent. That night, my father-in-law called me. "Hannah," his voice was utterly defeated. "I am so sorry for everything." I choked up. "You don't need to apologize, Dad. I am not going to let her cause any more scenes," he said tiredly. "I'm just so tired." I knew that was the sound of an old man finally surrendering after a lifetime of living under the control of a deeply toxic, domineering wife. Sitting alone in my childhood bedroom that night, I stared at the order of protection. 8 years. 8 years of suffering and silence. And finally, I had a piece of paper that legally stood between me and my abusers. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt completely drained. But beneath that bone-deep exhaustion, there was one undeniable, crystalline truth. Asterisk, I had almost made it to the end of the road. Asterisk, a month after that disastrous mediation, the court convened for the official divorce trial. I woke up very early that morning. I sat by my bedroom window, watching the morning sun wash over my parents' driveway, listening to the birds chirping in the oak trees. I felt bizarrely calm. I wasn't shaking like the day I flew back to the US. I wasn't panicked like the day they protested on our lawn. I didn't feel the sharp, stinging pain of being slapped at my own front gate. I just felt tired and entirely hollowed out like someone who had already cried every single tear her body could physically produce. My mom brewed me a hot cup of coffee. "Drink this, honey. Warm your stomach." "Thanks, Mom." I held the mug, my hands perfectly steady. My dad sat next to me, watching me intently. "You don't need to be afraid today," he said firmly. "No matter what the judge decides, you are always our daughter." I nodded, a hard lump forming in my throat. Maya drove me to the downtown courthouse. "Well, Hannah, after today, you're officially a free woman," she joked dryly, trying to lighten the mood. I smiled faintly. "Free or not, we'll see what the gavel says." Inside the courtroom, the air felt suffocatingly heavy. Liam sat at the respondent's table. His face was gaunt, his cheeks hollow, his jaw covered in messy, unkempt stubble. His mother sat directly behind him, her eyes burning with pure, unadulterated hatred. His father sat entirely alone in the very back row, his posture more stooped and defeated than ever. As the judge began methodically reading through the case file, listing every single piece of evidence out loud, I felt like I was listening to an audiobook of my own tragic life. The slap, the $8 bank account, the threatening, abusive text messages, the psychotic emails sent to my corporate HR department in London, the protest signs on my parents' lawn, the police reports, the physical assault by my mother-in-law in front of witnesses. With every detail read aloud into the official court record, my heart clenched, not out of pain, but out of a terrifying realization. Asterisk. If it weren't for this courtroom, if it weren't for the black ink on this legal paper, I probably would have been buried alive in that toxic marriage until the day I died. Asterisk. The judge turned a stern gaze toward Liam. "Mr. Liam, do you have anything to add to the record?" Liam stood up, his voice shaking terribly. "Your Honor, I was wrong. But every married couple loses their temper sometimes. I am begging for a chance to reconcile. I promise I will change." Listening to him, I felt absolutely nothing. I had heard that exact same script 100 times before. The judge turned to me. "Miss Hannah, has your position on seeking a dissolution of marriage changed?" I stood up. "No, Your Honor." My voice rang out clear and unwavering. "I do not believe a single promise that man makes." My mother-in-law shot up from her seat. "She is evil, Your Honor," she shrieked. "She abandoned her husband. She abandoned me. She fabricated this entire story just to get a divorce." The judge slammed his gavel down, his voice booming. "Order in the court. Ma'am, sit down and remain silent." He then glared directly at her. "You physically assaulted your daughter-in-law in front of witnesses and court staff. Do you deny this?" She snapped her mouth shut, fuming but silent. The judge turned back to Liam. Did you intentionally contact your wife's employer with fabricated, slanderous allegations in an attempt to terminate her employment? Liam looked down at his shoes. Yes. Did you systematically transfer the entirety of your marital income to your mother, leaving your joint marital accounts with insufficient funds to survive? Liam didn't answer. Did you physically strike your wife? Liam trembled visibly. Yes. The entire courtroom fell into a deafening silence. Suddenly, my father-in-law stood up from the back row. His voice was gravelly and broken. Your Honor, I would like to state for the record that my son did physically abuse his wife. I apologize on behalf of my family. My mother-in-law whipped around. Shut your damn mouth. The judge slammed his gavel again, threatening to have her removed from the courtroom by the bailiffs. After reviewing the final arguments, the judge stood up. The court finds overwhelming evidence to grant the petition for dissolution of marriage filed by the petitioner, Miss Hannah, on the grounds of irreconcilable differences exacerbated by documented domestic violence and financial abuse. The marriage is hereby dissolved as of today. There are no minor children. Marital assets will be divided as per the court's prior equitable distribution order. The temporary order of protection shall be converted into a permanent restraining order. Listening to the ruling, my ears started ringing. It was over. Just a few sentences from a judge, and 8 years of marriage was officially wiped from existence. I didn't cry. I just felt like an anvil had finally been lifted off my chest, allowing my lungs to fully expand for the first time in a decade. My mother-in-law began screaming hysterically. This is a travesty. She lied about everything. My father-in-law collapsed back into his seat, burying his face in his hands. Liam stood paralyzed at his table, his eyes red and brimming with tears. I turned my back on all of them and walked straight out the double doors. Out in the hallway, Maya threw her arms around me, pulling me into a crushing hug. It's done, Hannah. It's finally done. I nodded, burying my face in her shoulder as the tears finally began to fall. My parents were waiting for me at the end of the corridor. My mom pulled me into an embrace. You're free, baby. My dad patted my shoulder. Let's go home. Riding in the back seat of my dad's car, watching the familiar Chicago skyline pass by the window, I felt like a patient who had just survived a terminal illness and was finally being discharged from the hospital. That evening, my father-in-law called me one last time. Hannah, his voice was utterly defeated. The court has spoken. I have nothing left to say to you except I am so sorry. I don't blame you, Dad, I replied softly. I'm moving Martha out of the city and back to Indiana, he sighed. I need to get her away from here before she causes any more damage. Liam is having a very hard time accepting this. I hope you take care of your health, Dad, I said genuinely. He was quiet for a moment. Live a good life, Hannah, please. Don't let this nightmare of a marriage make you terrified of men for the rest of your life. I choked back a sob. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up, feeling a profound sense of closure. At the very least, one person in that family had finally accepted reality. 2 weeks later, I boarded a flight back to London to finish my corporate assignment. At O'Hare Airport, my mom held my hands tightly. Make sure you eat properly over there. I will, Mom. My dad carried my suitcase to the security line. Don't ever let anyone walk all over you again. If anything happens, call us immediately. I will, Dad, Maya grinned. You're a divorced woman now. Go live your best, most fabulous life. I laughed. I am going to live like a human being. The plane took off. I looked down at the sprawling grid of Chicago shrinking beneath the clouds. This time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was finally walking forward into my own life. 3 months later, my company promoted me to manage a massive new project, and my salary increased by almost 50%. I leased a beautiful modern apartment in London, bought my own furniture, cooked my own meals, and decorated my balcony with potted flowers. In the evenings, I would sit out on that balcony, sipping hot tea and watching the city lights flicker on. No one was screaming at me to get up and cook dinner. No one was demanding to know if I had transferred my paycheck to his mother. No one was telling me that a woman needed to know her place. There were still nights when I would have horrific nightmares. I would dream about the slap, about the $8 bank balance,